So we don't put ourselves out there as politicians or political experts in any way. We are educators, and we want to take that angle because I really feel that it's missing in the media. So we're going to talk about a few things tonight, and we just want to thank everybody for being here. We've had this idea for a while that we wanted to have this open discussion, and we just want to thank everybody for being here, making this happen, and we're going to keep it really casual. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. We'd love to answer them. If you have comments, if you have something that you'd like to add to the discussion, again, feel free to add that to the chat. Also, if you'd like to ask the question via audio or camera, that's fine too. Feel free to, is there a raise your hand feature? Can they do that? I don't, no? I don't think you can raise your hand feature, but if you feel like you'd like to get on camera and talk to us via audio, that's fine too. So I want to, Brian, did you have anything to say?
I was just going to introduce myself, if you don't mind.
That's
those of you guys who don't know me,
I said this is my friend. I thought you were going to take over.
I thought you were going to say my name. It's all right.
Okay.
Those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Brian China. I work with Don. We've been good friends for years now, and we're political nerds. I think it's awesome. Thank you guys, friends, family, students, for joining us. Always good to see young people. I don't know if this is what I would have been doing my first Thursday of summer in my junior year, jumping onto a political podcast, but certainly says a lot for you guys that you're joining us today. Hope you guys, hope you're engaged. Hope you jump in with some comments. Those of you guys who I know you have a lot of comments. I thank you, Don. Thank you, Zen, for bringing me in here and giving me the opportunity. And I'm looking forward to a fun time.
Yeah, the other part is my brother Zan is doing the producing. He's doing all the graphics, and he's basically making the whole thing happen. We can't do it without him. So I wanted to start our discussion off tonight. We're going to try to keep it as focused as possible. Now, I think that might be something that's a little difficult in the current environment that we're in. As I was kind of saying to Brian before, a month ago, we didn't talk about the Black Lives Matter movement as much, and now it seems like that's the only thing we talk about. But we do have an election in 5 months, and I want to focus on the election. And of course, the Black Lives Matter movement is going to play a role in the election, but I want to talk about the election. And one of the big headlines today about the election was that Politico reported that President Trump is basically getting things back to normal. He's been talking about getting America, back on track, getting things back to normal. And the headline is, the quote from one of his communications officers is, he has to get back to his life. And President Trump's life, he's running for re-election, is fundraisers and rallies. So he's in Dallas tonight. Tomorrow he'll be at a fundraiser in New Jersey, where he's going to raise about $10 million at a dinner. Not bad for one night's work. And then he's going to go back on the road, and he's going to be holding rallies. And he's going to be holding rallies. The campaign has scheduled rallies starting in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is interesting. But then what's kind of very interesting to us tonight is that he's going to be headed to Arizona, Florida, and North Carolina. And what we want to talk about tonight is, well, why? Well, why is the president of the United States holding rallies in those specific states? And the answer to that question is basically, well, we have an election coming up. We have 2 candidates now, and every 4 years, America needs to figure out, how do we elect a president, right? How does it work? And you guys have probably all heard the term. I don't think you'd be in here tonight if you didn't know that we elect a president not through a democratic vote, not through whoever gets the most votes, but through an electoral college. Right, Brian? We do elect a president through the electoral college, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, we elect senators, we elect representatives, we elect pretty much every state level official through a direct democracy. Yet when it comes to electing the most important person in our country, arguably, we don't. And there you see the 2016 map. We'll use that kind of as our jumping off point. I won't bore you with the history except for, give me 30 seconds. This goes back to 1787 when we wrote the Constitution. And, at the time, one of the big discussions in Philadelphia when they wrote the Constitution was how should we elect our president? And you really had two camps. You had some people who said, Congress should Congress should select the president. They're the most qualified to do so. And then you had another camp that said, no, the people should directly elect the president. And then obviously you had people on really all sides of the issue. At the end of the day, our founding fathers, really led by one of my favorite historical figures, Alexander Hamilton, didn't have much confidence in the average person. They didn't trust the average person to make a decision as important as directly electing the president. So they came up with this kind of, admittedly not perfect system. And they knew this. This was a compromise between those two camps. They knew this was not a perfect system. But they created this Electoral College where states, based really on their population, we'll talk about that in a second, are allotted a certain number of electoral votes. And you see there that map, and forget the colors for a second, but if you look at that map, you obviously see those numbers associated with each state. And the way you get that number and the number of electoral votes for each state is you add the number of senators in the state, which of course is 2 for all 50 states. And then you add the number of representatives in the House of Representatives from that state. And of course, if you've had my class or you know a little bit about history, the number of representatives that come from each state is dependent on that state's population. So when you add the number of senators plus the number of representatives, you get your electors from each state. So obviously, if you look at California, which is our most populated state, they have 53 members in the House of Representatives, 2 senators. They have 55 electoral votes. And really, the Electoral College has gone through some changes over the years, a lot of them early on. But the way it is now, for the most part, for 48 of the 50 states, it's a winner-take-all. So if I'm looking at California, the people in California on election day, they go and vote. In 2016, they weren't voting for Hillary Clinton. They weren't voting for Donald Trump. They were voting for either the electors of Donald Trump or the electors of Hillary Clinton. And the way that 48 of 50 states do it is it's a winner-take-all system in each state, which means that if we're looking at California, if either candidate wins by 1 vote or if they win by 1 million votes, they get all of the electoral votes in the state, which has really been problematic. And there's a lot we'll unpack today. But if you look at our last 5 elections, 40% of those elections, the person who won the popular vote, which is the actual humans who went and voted, actually lost the election. And we saw that in 2016, where really 3 million more people voted for Hillary Clinton than they did Donald Trump. And that seems kind of odd, and mathematically it may not make sense. But if you look at a state like California, which you see here is blue for Hillary Clinton, she got about 2.5 million more votes in California than did Donald Trump. So she really, she crushed him there in California. Then if you go to a state like Michigan, which you see there is 16 electoral votes, Donald Trump just eked out a victory in that state. He won by about 10,000 votes in Michigan. But according to the rules, he got all 16 electoral votes there. So if you're looking at this map and you're running for office, most people would think, hey, I'm going to go to California. I'm going to go to Texas. I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to go to Florida. They have the most electoral votes.
So, I mean, the one thing I always think about is, like, if I'm a Republican in California or I'm a Democrat in, Oklahoma, am I going to go out and vote? Isn't this whole system a disincentive for me to go out and vote?
You would like to think that.
I guess if I'm either way, I guess a Democrat in New York too, I guess it doesn't matter if I go out and vote or not.
Pretty much. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because a lot of these states, we already know which way it's going to go. So I'm going to cheat here, my list here. California, Hillary Clinton beat Donald Trump by 29% in California. So if you're a Republican in California, and millions of people were Republicans in California, they loved Donald Trump, they went and voted for him, Donald Trump got absolutely nothing from those votes. Just like you referenced Oklahoma, Donald Trump won Oklahoma by 37%. I think it was his largest margin of victory. So you really do kind of lose motivation to go vote in a lot of these states, especially if you already know which way it's going to go.
And on the other side, I guess if I'm the candidate, right, I'm not going to California. I'm not going to Brooklyn where the people are. I'm going to Ohio or, Pennsylvania, or Wisconsin, unless I'm Hillary Clinton. Then I'm not going to Wisconsin at all.
Well, that's where the
Right?
strategy comes in, and that's where people like me and you have so much fun looking at it.
Yeah.
Because if you're a candidate, you have limited time, you have limited resources, you have limited money, and you've got to decide where are you going to spend your time, where are you going to spend your money, running commercials and getting ads out there. If you're a Republican or a Democrat, it makes very little sense to do that in California.
So if you're a voter, where would you go vote? Where would you want to vote? Like if you could send your absentee ballot to any state, which state would you want to send it to?
Florida. Florida to me, and I think this election is going to go through Florida.
Really?
I would say whoever gets Florida is going to win the election. So that's where I would go.
Really?
Yeah.
But Florida is so different from the rest of the country. It definitely leans right. If any of us have ever been to Florida, we know Florida is very different than the rest of the country. And the road to the White House, we thought goes through Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and no Republican has ever won the White House without Ohio. So I don't know. I feel like there are more important states than Florida. Florida's the South.
Florida's the South, but we get a lot of Northeasterners going down there. It is the biggest prize reel out of all those swing states, although there's one that's really on my radar that I'm watching that we'll talk about today. To me, I'm going to Florida, Don. And if you look at Ohio, Trump won Ohio by almost 10%. So if I'm Trump, I've got to hold on to Ohio. I've really got to hold on to Florida as well. And one of the interesting things, and Don, you probably know the math on it, Democrats come in here already with a big lead, right? So if you look at states like California, New York, Massachusetts, if you add up those that we already know are going to go Biden, and you add up those that we already know are already going to go Trump, Biden's coming in here with the lead. And let me just say one more thing. You look at this map, you see it's almost all red, and obviously Trump did win. But if you look at the middle of the country, you see pretty small numbers. North Dakota, South Dakota, 3 electoral votes. Montana, Wyoming, 3. Nebraska, 3. Iowa, 6. If you've ever taken my class, we talk about sectionalism. I mean, we talk about different sections of the country. A lot of times these elections become the coast versus the center of the country, rural versus city. There's so many factors at play here. But yeah, Don, I would go to Florida. I think Trump's Florida. I think Biden can easily win Florida.
Okay, so that's and we're getting a question. Zan, who was that question from? Omar. Omar has a really good question in the chat, and that's, are there more swing states this year? Right. So I think last time, 2016, those of you that remember, we were talking about Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Trump swept all of those. And are there more swing states this year? Are there states in play that Biden could peel off from Trump? And are there states that, Trump could gain his advantage here?
I think that's a great question. And Don, I think you'll agree with me. One of the challenges of knowing is the polling. And if 2016 taught us anything, it's that the polling was so off. So states that we thought were solid for Hillary Clinton ended up going to Trump. So honestly, with everything going on, not only has there not been a lot of statewide polling, but you really have to question the accuracy of this polling with people impacted by COVID-19, and then just with the ability of people to actually go out there and poll these people. So I would say, I think there's a lot of states that are up for grabs. And even looking at some of the polls, even looking at a state like Arizona, which Trump won by a little over 4% last time. You've got a CNBC poll that came out last week that said Trump's up 1. You got a Fox News poll that puts Biden at +4.
Wow.
Even, and I'm going to say this. Okay, yeah. So here we see. So
let's look at this. Let's look at this new map. Everybody's talking about. I heard some people saying about Texas turning purple, and we're getting these purple states. I've heard people talk about purple states. What does that mean? Is that a new political party, or is that the mix of red and blue?
Well, I think you're seeing that. I think you're seeing Texas is the one that, and I was going to save it for later, but Texas is one, I mean, that Republicans have to win. I mean, historically, Texas has been a Republican stronghold. It's an old South state. Republicans have had it for forever. There's really, I mean, unless something crazy happens, there is no way that Donald Trump wins without Texas. But Texas, like a lot of other states, are changing. You see a growing Hispanic population in Texas. Yeah. And just looking back to even 2016, Trump won it by 9.2%. If we're looking at Paul and Quinnipiac, last week has him at +1. Emerson Poll, about a month ago, has him at +6, which is really not a very, very comfortable lead for something that was really a lock for Donald Trump. So, Don, I'm going to ask you this. Does Trump have to spend some time in Texas?
You know, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think if you're the Trump campaign, you do not go near Texas ad buys. You do not spend a dime in Texas, because I believe it's still going to go red. It's still going to be Trump's state. Beto O'Rourke ran really well against Ted Cruz. And, you know, yes, things are trending for the Democrats in Texas. But if you're spending money in Texas, the election's lost. And you should be in Michigan, Wisconsin, if you're the Trump campaign, Ohio. You got to keep those in your column. Florida, Georgia, which we'll talk about, I guess, soon, I'm sure. You know, no way. It's just the battle's lost if you're there. That's what I think. So I wouldn't have him do anything in Texas besides do these fundraisers that he's going to do in Dallas and Houston, I'm sure.
Well, we should point that out, that you might see on your TV in the next 5 months, Trump or Biden coming to New York, going to California.
Yeah.
The reason they're coming here, they're probably not going to campaign. They're probably coming here for New York money or California money that they're going to take from New York and then go spend it in a state like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Florida, maybe Texas. I don't know. I think if Democrats play their cards right, it's a long shot, but I think Texas could be in play. But I also agree with you that if Trump has to worry about Texas, then you're right. All is probably lost. And all those other swing states that we mentioned are probably also gone.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I want to go to a question. Dr. Cressy has a pretty good question. You know, what were the states that went for Obama and then turned red for Trump, which I always found interesting. And, you know, we always talk about these in political nerddom. We always talk about these Obama Trump voters. So which states were those? I know definitely Pennsylvania, right? That was the big one that we were all surprised about.
Well, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. You know, those were Democratic strongholds for, I think, probably back to '88 when Bush Sr. won those states in you know, his first run. You know, Michigan, Wisconsin are ones that Democrats have to be targeting to get back. Those are ones that they lost.
The one I'm really surprised about, well, Florida also, right? Florida, Obama won Florida twice.
Yeah, but those were close. I mean, I mean, even if you remember that night, you know, we didn't even know Florida that night against Romney.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at Democratic strongholds, Wisconsin, Michigan, really Pennsylvania. And you know, if you look at last time, Democrats knew they were in trouble. You know, Obama and Hillary, they were all there in Philadelphia the night before the election. They knew Pennsylvania was in trouble, and they ended up losing it. I
had no idea he was in trouble. She was in trouble. I was just enjoying Bruce Springsteen. And Obama was there, and the Biden, you know, Michelle was there. They were rocking out. I didn't know the internal polling, you know, everybody in the Hillary campaign was worried. I didn't know that. I wish I knew that.
Well, maybe I should have Michigan instead, but
the thing is, and this is a completely different podcast. I don't want to get completely off, but to Dr. Cressy's question, Iowa was also an Obama clear victory, 6 points, I believe.
Yeah.
And Trump, I think he won it by 8 or 9 points last time.
9.6.
It's huge swing. So, are we going to talk about some of these states that are in play now? Are there any states last time that weren't in play that are in play now? I think there are.
Well, I'm going to go to Georgia. I think Georgia, and I think this is where you could see the South crack. I have my eye on North Carolina, which I think is another one that Democrats have been knocking at the door with. But to me, the big state for me is Georgia. I obviously, in a little bit, we'll go to our top 5 VP picks. I think that if Democrats can grab Georgia, there you see it's 16 electoral votes. And, you see all those other states around it. All those other states in the South went red last time. They were all for Trump. I think if you get Georgia, I think if you can get Florida, get enough support in the South, maybe you get North Carolina. I think that this is going to be a very, very good night for the Biden campaign. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but
yeah.
I'm looking at Georgia. Trump won Georgia by 5.7%.
Georgia. Georgia and Arizona is what everybody's talking about, that they could be the ones that the Biden camp could peel off. I'm not convinced about Georgia at all. They've got a Republican governor. Everybody,
barely, Don.
Yes, no, I know. Well, who'd he beat?
3 picks, Stacey Abrams. I've loved Stacey Abrams for months now.
So you love Stacey Abrams. Should Biden love Stacey Abrams? You're telling me that this is an important vice presidential pick. I'm not buying that vice presidents are important ever.
You can't be more wrong. Normally I might agree with you, but
it's
this
ridiculous.
year, first of all, look, we are going through a major change right now. We are in the middle of a huge change. We already have Biden.
History teachers always say that.
The last VP female was Geraldine Ferraro 30 years ago, or more.
Yeah.
And it was a desperate pick then. I guess you could say Sarah Palin, but I'm going to try to walk past that. So the last real viable pick you had was her. That's going to be historic. And I think he's got to pick someone of color. I think it would be really tone deaf. And I know you're going to say there's probably a lot of white women who would be good. Elizabeth Warren, which makes a lot of sense because you want to try to maybe bring that progressive wing of the party on, your wing of the party. Amy Klobuchar is very qualified, very competent. You have a bunch of white women out there who would probably be a good pick. But I think he's got to pick a person of color. I think if you look at South Carolina, and those of you who don't know and didn't follow the primary, Joe Biden was dead. He had a horrible showing in Iowa, a horrible showing in New Hampshire, went down to South Carolina, was able to turn out the African-American vote. It was really the first diverse state in the primary process. And South Carolina won him this nomination. And I think it's smart politically. I think it's the right thing to do now for a variety of reasons to pick a woman of color on his ticket. Your thoughts, Don?
I don't know. I'm conflicted. I'm kind of in this weird twilight zone where I don't think the vice president is an important pick. I don't think it wins you elections. It could lose you elections, but I don't think it can win you elections. And John McCain lost that election because of Sarah Palin, I think partially, but I don't think Obama won the election because of Biden. I don't think, Reagan won the election in 1980 because of Bush. I just don't see it as a historical precedent. Hillary Clinton picked Tim Kaine because she thought he wasn't going to lose the election for her. And the same thing with Mike Pence. I think Mike Pence was just a pick that wasn't going to win Trump the election or lose him the election. I just feel like, people are saying, Biden's got to pick a woman of color, and that's going to get him, this huge turnout in the African-American community, or it's going to get him Georgia. I don't think so. I don't know about that.
Well, now, where were all the Obama voters? Where were the 08-012 voters in 16?
They voted for Trump, a lot of them.
Did they? A lot of them didn't show up. A lot of them didn't show up. And I think it comes down to voter turnout. I think, listen, there's very few people, I would say really no humans in the world right now are kind of in the air about Trump. Either you love him or you hate him. And that's fine either way. I'm not here to tell people who to support. But there's nobody who's on the fence here on whether or not they like or dislike Donald Trump. The thing now is how do the Democrats get people to come out to the polls? That's it. You have to motivate and excite people to get out to the polls. You've got Biden, who's going to be our oldest person ever elected if he wins. There's is legitimate and many questions about his health. Listen, I agree. In 1980, Reagan could have picked, he could have picked anyone. He could have picked
spring chicken.
Yeah, he could have picked anyone to run with him.
Right?
He would have won. But I think in this election, when we have so many swing states, when you have Michigan, Trump won by 0.3. You've got Minnesota by 1.5. You've got New Hampshire, Clinton won by 0.4. You've got Pennsylvania, Trump won by 1.2. Wisconsin by 1. Florida by less than 3. I think 10, 20, 30,000 votes in either direction, it could really turn the tide of this thing. I think
so
way off.
All right. Okay. All right. So tell me who your top 5 are. Tell me.
Okay. I'm excited.
Should be on the list? Who should be on the list for Biden to pick? And I'll give you my top 5 also.
Well, there's a lot of qualified women who are going to be on the list. And, listen, for Trump, for Biden already eliminating half the population, obviously committing to a female, I really struggled to weigh through some of this. My number 5 pick, I actually hate this pick. And I don't understand it. I put it on because I know I had to, and I'm going to let you prove me wrong, is Kamala Harris. And those of you who don't know her, she's a senator from California. She ran for president, did well, really had a few very contentious exchanges with Biden, called him out for supporting senators who supported segregationist policies. She brings experience. There's no doubt about that. She's been battle tested. She's gone through this process. I will give her that. She's from California. So again, if you go back to our conversation before, electorally, we know Biden's going to get California. So she's not going to bring you a state. Yet everywhere I go, I see her as the number 1 pick, the front runner for VP pick. She's qualified. I mean, she's a safe pick, I think. But there's a few more people that I'm much more excited about. So maybe, Don, you could explain to me, what is all the excitement about Kamala Harris?
She's competent. She could be president on day 1, on January 21st if we need her. And I think that should be something that Americans should get excited about, or Democrats should get excited about. That she could be president if need be, and she could play a role in policy making, because she's done that from the Senate. And she doesn't win in California. That's the only down part about Kamala Harris. I really don't see any downside to Kamala Harris, besides electorally speaking, she doesn't bring a state with her.
You don't see the fact that her and Biden have really been, she is on record. And Republicans are going to play these quotes, basically saying that Joe Biden has supported racist senators. With everything going on right now, you don't think that that's damning for the ticket, especially when you look at Obama and Biden? I don't think I've ever seen the vice president love their president more than Joe Biden loved Barack Obama.
That's true.
I would be shocked to see him arm in arm with somebody who said all these bad things about him.
I think we got to hit the reset button on a lot of this. And my number 5 pick proves that, I think we can hit the reset button on everything here. And we can we can start this thing all over, right? I picked a Republican as my number 5 pick, because one of my favorite presidents is Abraham Lincoln, who picked a Democrat on his ticket. So
that went great.
Condoleezza Rice, Bush administration, Secretary of State, just an absolutely accomplished person. She's not an ideologue. She's not going to come in and try to cut Social Security from day 1, right? But she is electorally going to bring along a lot of the voters that maybe left the Republican Party because of Trump. And she's going to bring those people along. And I feel like a pick like this would be awesome. It'd be great for the country. Maybe not for the Democratic Party, but it'd be good for the country.
I mean, I can't knock her because I love Condoleezza Rice. So
that's why I put her
bad
on.
about her. and then you've really got me here. I mean, I'll say this, and it's when I wrote this in the notes when I was talking today. The Democrat, I mean, listen, Biden is a moderate Democrat, right? So you've got your Bernie wing, you've got your, even Elizabeth Warren, although she's not that left. You know, there's still a large percentage of this Democratic Party who wants people left of Biden. Condoleezza Rice obviously doesn't do that for you. Now, what she does do is she can reach over and grab some moderate Republicans and independents and bring them over to your side. So I think it's an interesting pick. I think it's a risky pick. I don't know if Biden has to be as risky to pick somebody as, you know, from a different party. Although I've always wanted, I think we've probably talked about this, I've always wished that John McCain had taken Joe Lieberman with him in 2008 instead of Sarah Palin. I don't think it would have changed anything. So I think it was Obama's turn. It was an historic election. But I agree that Sarah Palin hurt him. I'm waiting for a candidate to pick somebody on the other side of the aisle. I don't know if this is the year. I don't know. But it's an interesting pick, Don. I don't knock it.
Well, she's number 5. She's not at the top. Who's your number 4?
Number 4, I've got a lot of facts here, all right? Michelle Grisham, governor of New Mexico. She is Hispanic. And I think that, and listen, I'm not saying that just because Biden would put somebody Hispanic on the ticket means that Hispanics across the country are going to support the ticket. But I do think it's an interesting political move here, right? So first of all, she's from New Mexico. Now, New Mexico, I would say it's a swing state. Where's my math here? All right, Hillary won it by 8.3%, but it's still a swing state, right? So now I did a little research, and I looked up states with the highest Hispanic population. And I'm going to give you the top 7. Number 1 is New Mexico. About half the state is Hispanic, right? Now, I'm assuming, obviously, you pick the governor of New Mexico, you're going to win that state anyway.
Right.
Texas, a state that Trump won by less than 10, almost 40% Hispanic. Does that change it? Maybe.
No, I think
California, I'm going to throw out. All right, we know that's going to Biden. Arizona, you've mentioned Arizona a few times tonight. Trump won it by 4.1%. Over 31% of the population in Arizona is Hispanic. Nevada, another swing state, Clinton won it by 2.4, almost 30% Hispanic. Next up, Florida. Trump won it by 1.3%, over a quarter. You talk about the Miami-Dade area. I think it's all about voter turnout. So would this be a deciding factor to get people to come out? And the last one on my list here, and I'm going in order. Again, top 7 states here. Colorado, Hillary Clinton won it by 2.8, over 21% Hispanic. With that said, and again, I know we're in an interesting time. Joe Biden showed you in South Carolina that he can turn out the African-American vote.
Right.
So I'm not saying you take any vote for granted. And again, I'm not saying that whoever you put on the ticket, whether it be Hispanic or white or African-American, people of that demographic are going to go vote for that person. But this is an interesting pick because I think, out of those top 7 states with Hispanic populations, 7 of them are arguably in play. And again, you don't need to move millions of people in these states. I think 10, 20, 30,000 in either direction, you can win a state. Another thing I like executive experience, right? So nothing against senators. Senators are important, but I like she's run a state, right? Yeah. Running a state, obviously much easier than running a country, but she has executive experience. And that's something that I always like, especially in the VP pick. Obviously Biden was VP, but he spent most of his time as a senator. So that's my number 4, Don. Your thoughts?
I think that's great. I love this one. This is awesome. She's not on my list, but your argument is absolutely compelling about the ability to win or at least compete in those 7 states. And this is great. If he picks her, I think he has a chance in those 7 states, as you said. And I think executive experience is something that elections, I think it works with the voters. That's why people usually talk about it. They did say it with Sarah Palin. I do remember them saying that she was the only one on the ticket because she was the only non-senator, right, with executive experience. So she said that. She ruined it with all the Russia stuff. But I think you're onto something here. This wouldn't be bad. I think this is really good. My number 4 is somebody we've already talked about. Again, somebody in a state similar to Governor Grisham that that Biden doesn't have to win, right? So I have Kamala on my list, of course, because I think she deserves to be there. She ran for president. She did a great job, I think. And she's on the short list because she's already vetted. She has national recognition, and we can't get rid of her yet. Even though I do think her star is fading.
Again, safe pick, super qualified. I'm not knocking her.
Yeah.
There's just people that I'm more excited about.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess my number 3.
Yeah.
And I mean, my top 3 could have gone any direction here. My number 3 is going to be Stacey Abrams. And those of you guys who don't know her, she's the former minority leader in the Georgia House of Representatives. She almost won the governorship there. This woman has talked about for years getting people out to vote, right? And I feel like, and I said it before, if Democrats just get their people out to vote, they're going to win the election, all right? Aside from that, I mean, she's obviously been in the national spotlight, a little inexperienced on the national scene, but her name is certainly not new. And then you have that potential to get Georgia. And if you could get Georgia, and what are we at, 16, I think it was? 16 electoral votes in your solid South down there, I think that's a game changer. I think if you can start flipping southern states, and again, I think Trump won Georgia by less than 6%. I think it can be flipped. I think she's a really, really interesting pick.
I think absolutely. She's a very interesting pick. I think she's too low on your list, honestly. That's how interesting she is. She is ready for prime time. If you've seen her on TV, if you've seen her on CNN or The View or whatever, she's ready to go. Yes, I do. So for the political banter, I like it. It's good. So I think she is absolutely ready for this ticket. I think she is polished. She's out there. She's been talking about your right to vote, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, a libertarian, an anarchist, whatever. She wants you to be able to go to the polls. And those of you that saw on the news yesterday, Georgia's primary was a disaster, right? She's basically saying you shouldn't have to wait 3.5 hours in line to vote. And voter suppression is a real thing in the South. Anybody who has any idea about American history knows that voter suppression is very real. I think us here in the Northeast, especially in New York and Long Island, we don't really see it, right? We can kind of walk into our local elementary school and vote very quickly. And she's talking about something that people in the South have been upset about for a very long time. And I think she will bring out a lot of people. I think it's a great pick. My number 3 pick is Tammy Duckworth.
Okay.
Tammy Duckworth is, for those of you who don't know her, she's a senator from Wisconsin. And she is, what I love about her is her story. I think the story that she brings to this election is one that Americans can rally behind. And just to bring a little bit more history into things, and world history for a second, one of the things about human societies is that we love to tell ourselves stories, and we love to rally behind heroes. And I think Tammy Duckworth is somebody that the American people can rally behind. Tammy Duckworth, she was a U.S. Army lieutenant colonel, helicopter pilot, I believe. She's a double amputee. She lost both her legs in Iraq. After she lost both her legs, she got an exemption to still